Chosen one, the test is already over, and the reason you may not know it is simple. Nothing dramatic happened when you passed. There was no trumpet. No sudden sign appeared. Your bank account may have looked the same, and the person who hurt you may never have apologized. But somewhere inside that difficult season, something changed in a way that mattered more than any visible announcement. Pressure stopped making your decisions for you. You still felt the weight. You still had questions. But fear no longer had the final word about who you would become. Think about the last time you wanted to return to something you already knew was wrong for you. The old version of you might have gone back just to escape uncertainty. This time you felt the discomfort. You felt the loneliness. And somehow, you stayed where your peace told you to stay. Think about the last time someone misunderstood you. Once, you may have spent days explaining yourself, replaying every sentence, trying to control how they saw you. This time, it still hurt, but you did not abandon yourself just to repair another person's opinion. That was the test. You may have thought the test was about how much pain you could survive, but the deeper question was whether pain could still decide who you became. You did not need to become fearless. You only needed to stop letting fear become your ruler. This is why I am not going to tell you that a miracle must arrive tomorrow. I am not asking you to believe a promise just because it sounds comforting. I want you to look at evidence, real evidence. Evidence written into your own behavior. Look at what used to trigger you instantly. Look at what used to pull you back. Look at the doors you once reopened because silence felt unbearable. Look at the approval you once chased because rejection made you question your worth. Some of those forces may still speak, but they do not command you the way they once did. And there is one decision you made that proves this more clearly than almost anything else. You probably did not celebrate it. Nobody around you may have noticed. But that quiet decision revealed that the season had already changed you. Before we reach the end, I want to show you 3 kinds of evidence that reveal whether the test has already done its work. I also want to show you why people can pass a difficult season and still feel exhausted, guarded, and strangely unable to receive what comes next. Because this is where many people lose the benefit of what they learned. They survive the battle, but they keep living as if the battle is still happening. They carry vigilance into peace. They carry suspicion into healthy opportunities. They carry old fear into new rooms. So hold one question close. What did you stop doing that the old version of you could never stop doing? That answer matters more than you think. It is the beginning of your real scorecard. And in a moment, you are going to see why the things you no longer do may be the clearest proof that you already passed. If this is landing somewhere deep inside you, write, "I passed," below. Let it mark the moment you stop measuring growth only by what has arrived and start noticing who you became while you were waiting. Because the first reward is not always what enters your hands. Sometimes the first reward is realizing that the version of you who entered the test is not the version standing here now. Chosen one. The clearest evidence may be hidden in what no longer controls you. You may still remember the pain. You may still feel the scar. But the old reaction is not automatic anymore, and that difference is bigger than it looks. For a long time, you may have measured progress by outcomes. Did the money come? Did the relationship change? Did the door open? Did someone finally recognize your value? When those things did not happen quickly, you assumed nothing important had changed. But that was the wrong scorecard. An identity test cannot be measured only by external results. It has to be measured by what pressure can still make you do. That is where the evidence becomes undeniable. You used to chase closure. Now you can let silence remain silent. You used to reopen doors because loneliness made you doubt your boundary. Now you can miss someone and still know they are not meant to return. You used to make decisions just to quiet anxiety. Now you can wait long enough to hear what is actually true. This is the first breakthrough. The test was not asking whether you could control the outcome. It was revealing whether the outcome could control you. Once that changes, the entire meaning of the season changes with it. I call this the invisible scorecard. It measures what cannot be photographed. It measures whether fear still owns your choices, whether loneliness still negotiates your standards, and whether uncertainty can still push you back into patterns you already know are costly. Most people miss this because visible rewards are easier to count. A new job can be announced, a relationship can be posted, money can be measured. But inner authority is quieter, and it often becomes real before anything outside you catches up. That is why you may have passed without feeling victorious. The proof was happening in ordinary moments. It happened when you did not send the message. It happened when you walked away without one more explanation. It happened when you chose peace, even though panic offered a faster answer. And there is another sign that matters. You no longer need immediate relief at any price. That is a massive shift. A person ruled by pressure will trade tomorrow for comfort today. A person who has changed can tolerate discomfort without handing over the future. This does not mean you never struggle. It means struggle no longer has automatic access to your decisions. It does not mean you never feel lonely. It means loneliness cannot buy your loyalty to what already broke you. So ask yourself one clean question. What can no longer make me betray what I know? Sit with that. Do not rush past it. The answer may reveal more progress than the outcome you have been watching for months. And once you see that, you stop calling every delay a failure. If this is becoming clear, write, "I see it now" below. Let those words mark the moment you stop using only visible outcomes to measure invisible growth. But another question is already opening. If you truly changed, why do you still feel tired? Why does your body still brace for bad news? Why can peace arrive and still feel unfamiliar? That is where the next layer begins. Passing the test does not always mean your inner world immediately realizes the test is over. Chosen one, passing a test does not always feel like winning. Sometimes it feels like exhaustion. Sometimes it feels strangely empty. You expected relief to feel warm and obvious, but instead you wake up still, waiting for the next thing to go wrong. You may sleep and still feel tired. You may receive good news and immediately search for the catch. You may finally have a quiet day, yet your mind keeps scanning for a problem. Nothing is happening, but part of you is still preparing. That does not automatically mean your faith is weak. It does not automatically mean another test has begun. Sometimes, the outer pressure decreases before your inner habits know how to release it, and that delay can make peace feel unfamiliar. I call this the after-test lag. It is the space between what has changed around you and what has not fully changed inside you yet. The season may be quieter, but your attention is still trained to look for danger. Something similar can happen after a long season of pressure. You learn to check twice. You replay conversations. You prepare for disappointment before anything disappointing has happened. You call it being careful, and sometimes it is. But sometimes it is yesterday trying to manage today. This is why good things can feel suspicious at first. A healthy person may seem too calm. A simple opportunity may seem too easy. A peaceful week may make you wonder what is hiding behind it. Your mind became skilled at finding threats, so the absence of threat can feel like missing information. Here is the deeper reframe. You are not always waiting for God to move. Sometimes your inner world is waiting for enough evidence to believe it is safe to stop waiting. That difference matters because it changes what your next step actually requires. You may not need more pressure. You may not need another dramatic sign. You may need to let your inner world catch up with what your life is already showing you. That is not passivity. It is learning to stop carrying the posture of war into every new room. Notice what happens when something good appears. Do you receive it, or do you interrogate it? Do you explore the possibility, or do you immediately build a case for why it will fail? Those reactions can reveal whether the old season is still speaking through your attention. This is where many people misunderstand the reward. They expect the reward to arrive as an object, a person, or a sudden external breakthrough. But sometimes the first reward is the ability to see clearly enough to recognize what was previously hidden by constant vigilance. And that opens the next question. What if an opportunity can be present while your attention is too occupied with danger to recognize it? What if the problem is not always the absence of a signal, but the condition of the receiver? Hold that question. We are going to return to it, because it explains why some people can know what matters, pray for clarity, and still feel strangely unable to move. For now, remember this. Feeling tired does not prove you failed. Feeling cautious does not prove the test continues. Sometimes it simply means the outer season changed first, and your inner world is still learning the new rhythm. You are not required to force that shift, but you are invited to notice it. And once you can name the after-test lag, you stop confusing old protection with present truth. Chosen one. This is where the meaning of reward begins to change. You may have been waiting for money, a relationship, a promotion, or one unmistakable sign that proves the season is finally different. But reward does not always enter your life as something you can hold. Sometimes it arrives first as capacity. You notice an idea you would have ignored before. You see an option that used to disappear inside your anxiety. You hear a simple conversation differently because your mind is no longer spending all of its strength preparing for disappointment. That matters. A door can be present and still go unseen. An opportunity can be real and still feel invisible when your attention is trained to search for danger first. This is why the end of a test is not only about what appears outside you, it is also about what you are finally able to notice. Imagine waking up tomorrow without immediately scanning the day for what might go wrong. Your first thought is not about who is upset, what bill is waiting, or which problem may arrive before noon. You simply breathe, look at what is in front of you, and choose one clean next step. That kind of clarity may sound small. It is not. It changes what you can see, what you can trust, and how quickly you can act without abandoning discernment. A clear decision made at the right moment can change a week, a relationship, a career path, or the way you carry yourself into a room that once intimidated you. This is why receiving requires more than desire. You can want change deeply and still miss the moment when change asks for a response. You can pray for direction and still second-guess the direction when it arrives in a form that does not match your expectation. So the question becomes more precise. Are you only waiting for God to place something new in front of you, or are you also becoming able to recognize what is already asking for your attention? There is something I want you to hold before we go deeper. Over the last few decades, researchers have explored how different parts of the brain coordinate attention, creativity, and decision-making. That research points toward a question that fits this season more closely than most people realize. What if part of what you have been calling spiritual hesitation is also a receiver operating under too much noise? I am not giving you the answer yet. I want the question to stay open, because before we return to that research, you need to understand the shape of the problem. It may help explain. You may have the right values. You may have learned the lesson. You may even sense what the next step is. But if every signal has to fight through exhaustion, overthinking, and constant internal checking, insight can remain insight without becoming movement. If this part is speaking directly to you, write, "I am ready to receive" below. Let it mark the shift from waiting for proof to becoming available for clarity. Because the reward you are asking for may not only require an open door, it may require an inner condition clear enough to recognize the door when it opens. Chosen one. Now we come to the receiver problem. This is the place where many sincere people become confused because they know what matters and still cannot seem to move with it. You may pray and still feel mentally foggy. You may know a decision needs to be made, yet spend days circling it. You may feel an intuitive pull in one direction, then immediately bury it under 10 competing possibilities. That does not automatically mean you are lazy. It does not automatically mean you are faithless. It does not mean you are cursed, abandoned, or somehow less chosen than someone who seems to move faster. Sometimes, there is a simpler explanation. The signal may be clear enough, but the receiver is overloaded. Your values can be intact while your attention is scattered. Your calling can matter deeply while your mind is exhausted from scanning too many possibilities at once. I call this the receiver gap. It is the distance between recognizing what matters and being internally clear enough to act on it. That gap can grow during long periods of stress because attention becomes trained to monitor danger before it evaluates possibility. Think about how this shows up. You sit down to do one important thing, then suddenly feel the urge to check everything else. You receive one encouraging message, but your mind searches for the hidden problem. You make a decision, then reopen it 3 hours later, as if nothing was settled. You may call that discernment. Sometimes it is not. Discernment examines what is true. Overload keeps reopening what has already been examined because uncertainty itself feels unsafe. This distinction is important. Your spiritual life does not live inside a machine, and your brain does not replace faith. But the condition of your attention can influence how clearly you evaluate information, how steadily you hold a decision, and how effectively you turn insight into action. Notice your body for a moment. Feel your jaw. Notice your shoulders. Notice whether your chest is tight. Do not fix anything yet. Just observe how quickly your body prepares when your mind believes another problem needs to be solved. Now imagine that same system trying to process a new opportunity. If every possibility is first translated into risk, even a good door can feel exhausting. The issue may not be that nothing is being offered. The issue may be that everything is arriving through too much internal noise. This is why clarity matters so much after a test. Clarity is not the reward itself. Clarity is the capacity to work with what the next season places in front of you without automatically dragging every old fear into the decision. And now we can return to the question I asked you to hold. Researchers have spent decades studying how different regions and hemispheres of the brain coordinate specialized functions. One part of that history became especially famous because of work that received the Nobel Prize. I am going to come back to that discovery in a moment. But first, understand why I waited. A solution means very little until you can name the problem it is meant to address. You now know the problem. You can have insight without movement. You can have values without clean attention. You can know what matters while your internal receiver is still crowded by the habits of a season that required constant vigilance. The next question is the one that changes everything. If the signal is not the only issue, what helps the receiver become clearer? Hold that question. The answer is where the spiritual lesson and the practical layer finally meet. Chosen one, you now understand why passing the test and feeling ready for the next season are not always the same thing. You can know what changed and still hesitate. You can see the lesson and still struggle to turn insight into movement. Why does knowing all of this still not produce action? Why can clarity remain an idea instead of becoming a clean next step? The missing piece may not be another message. It may be the condition from which you are trying to receive and respond. Here is the plain truth. The test was about whether pressure still had authority over your choices. The after-test lag explains why your inner world can keep preparing for danger after the season changes. The receiver gap explains why you can know what matters, while your attention remains too scattered to use what you know. And this is who you are becoming now, not the person waiting to prove endurance again. You are becoming a receiver, a steward, and a decision maker who can carry wisdom without allowing old fear to run every new moment. The clarity you have gained is real, but understanding why you were stuck and having a practical way to support clarity are not the same thing. Remember the research question I asked you to hold earlier? Part of the answer reaches back to Dr. Roger Sperry, whose split-brain research contributed to the Nobel Prize in 1981. His work deepened scientific understanding of specialized functions across the two cerebral hemispheres. That research did not prove the product I am about to mention, but it helped shape wider interest in how the hemispheres cooperate. A woman from California described years of mental fog and feeling as though life was happening to her. After using the resource I am about to describe, she reported feeling clearer and less internally blocked. A man from Texas carried work, family, and constant responsibility while feeling mentally dull. After using the same resource, he reported greater clarity and a sense that his thinking was working together again. These are individual reports, not guarantees. The resource is called the Genius Switch. It is a digital, 8-minute targeted auditory sequence associated with neurologist Doctor Daniel Barone. Its creators describe the technology as neural sync technology designed to support whole brain activation. The routine is simple. Use headphones, close your eyes, relax, listen for 8 minutes a day. There is no complicated ritual, and it is not presented as a replacement for prayer, discernment, sleep, medical care, or the work your life still requires. This is not for everyone. It is for the chosen one who has done serious inner work and refuses to treat mental fog as a permanent identity. The standard listed price is $49. The current page described in the product materials offers it for $39 with lifetime digital access and 4 bonuses. The bonuses include a guided visualization, a grocery guide, a classic manifestation book, and a 5 habits infographic. The offer is also described as carrying a money-back guarantee. The product materials state that the current $39 price may increase. Do not panic over that. If the resource fits what you need, make a clear decision. If it does not, keep the insight and leave the tool. 1. Caution matters. The official product materials say the verified version is available through the official page, not random copies using similar names. The link in the description and pinned comment points to that page, so you can read the details yourself. If your spirit resonates with what has been described, read the page before deciding. Do not buy because you feel pressured. Do not buy because you think purchasing proves faith. Let clarity lead. A tool does not replace God. It does not obey for you. It does not make your decisions or guarantee a reward. If it is useful for you, it can support the condition from which you think and respond. The deeper work remains yours. And that brings us back to the final test, because surviving the old season can become its own identity if you never learn how to leave it. Chosen one. There is one last mistake people make after a hard season. They assume that because suffering shaped them, suffering must remain the proof that they are growing. That belief can become a trap. You start expecting every good thing to arrive through pain. You become suspicious of ease. You feel guilty when life becomes quieter, because part of you learned to associate struggle with meaning. But not every hardship is another test. Not every delay is a divine lesson. Not every closed door is a command to endure longer. Sometimes, the mature response is not to stay. Sometimes it is to release, decide, and move. This is where the survival identity trap begins. You survived so much that survival became part of how you recognize yourself. You became the one who can handle anything, the one who carries everyone, the one who keeps going when nobody else understands. That strength was real. But strength can become a prison when you believe you must keep proving it. If suffering was the classroom, you do not honor the lesson by refusing to graduate. You are not chosen because you can tolerate more pain than everyone else. You are not more spiritual because you stay in situations that keep draining you. Maturity is not measured by how long you can remain uncomfortable. Maturity looks different now. It looks like discernment without panic. It looks like boundaries without bitterness. It looks like patience without paralysis. It looks like receiving something good without immediately asking how long before it disappears. This is the deeper liberation. You can keep the wisdom and release the war posture. You can remember what happened without making the memory responsible for every new decision. Ask yourself what you are still trying to prove. Are you proving that you can survive alone? Are you proving that you need nobody? Are you proving that rest must be earned through exhaustion? Maybe the next season does not need more proof. Maybe it needs your participation. This is the moment when the old identity begins to loosen. You stop asking what else you must endure before you deserve peace. You stop treating pain like currency. You stop measuring your worth by how much weight you can carry without asking for help. And something surprising happens. You become available for a different kind of strength. The strength to choose quickly when the truth is clear. The strength to say no without explaining for an hour. The strength to receive support without feeling weak. If part of you still feels unworthy of what comes next, hear this carefully. A good thing does not become legitimate only after it hurts enough. Rest does not have to be purchased with collapse. Peace does not need suffering to justify its arrival. You already learned what the old season came to teach you. Now the question is whether you will carry the lesson forward without carrying the prison with it. The test was never meant to become your permanent home, and what comes next requires a skill that survival could never teach by itself. It requires learning how to live beyond the test. Chosen one, living beyond the test does not mean becoming careless. It means carrying discernment into a life that no longer needs constant defense. Imagine a work opportunity appearing tomorrow. The old pattern would scan every possible failure, replay every risk, and delay until the opportunity became heavier than it needed to be. The new pattern asks one question: is this aligned with what I know is true? Then you choose one clean next step. You send the message, you make the call, you review the offer. You stop asking your entire future to reveal itself before you take one responsible action. The same shift enters relationships. You stop chasing mixed signals. You stop punishing healthy people for what unhealthy people taught you to fear. Your calling changes too. An idea comes. Instead of researching it until the original spark disappears, you test it. You give it form. You allow movement to create information that overthinking could never produce. There is a simple reset you can use when the old alarm returns. Remember the word pass. First, pause the old alarm. Fear can speak without becoming prophecy. You do not need to obey the first sensation that enters your body. Second, ask what is actually true. Separate facts from projections. Name what you know, and name what you are only imagining. Third, select the clean next step. Not 10 steps, not the whole plan. Choose the smallest responsible action that moves you toward what is true. Fourth, stop reopening the decision. Once you have discerned carefully, do not put the same choice back on trial every 15 minutes. Use one sentence to measure the reset. My next clean step is this. Then name it clearly. Now, let your body participate. Place one hand on your chest or let both hands rest in your lap. Notice your breathing. Do not force it. Just allow one slower breath to enter and leave. Imagine yourself standing outside the place where the old test happened. You do not need to destroy the door. You do not need to prove that you escaped. The door is already behind you. Look forward now. There is no need to see the entire road. Let one clear step appear in your mind. It may be a conversation, a boundary, a decision, or a simple act you have delayed. Tell yourself quietly, I do not need the whole future to take the next clean step. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw soften. Let your body feel the difference between preparing for danger and preparing for movement. For the person who felt something stir when the clarity resource was mentioned earlier, the link remains in the description and pinned comment. Read the details for yourself and decide from clarity rather than pressure. Now leave that decision there. The rest of this message belongs to something deeper, because you are not trying to become the person who survives better. You are learning to become the person who can receive, steward, choose, and move without dragging yesterday into every tomorrow. The road ahead does not need a perfect version of you. It needs a present version of you, clear enough to see, grounded enough to choose. Chosen one, before we close, give yourself one quiet moment to recognize what you actually carried through this season. Not everything needs to be explained tonight. Some things only need to be released. You endured silence that forced you to hear yourself more clearly. You watched doors close that you once believed you could not live without. And still, something in you remained. Maybe it was small at first. Maybe it was only one honest decision at a time. But it remained long enough to become a different way of living. Release the need to prove that you are strong. Release the need to chase what already chose distance. Release the habit of preparing for disaster before the day has even shown you what it carries. Release the guilt you feel when you rest. Release the belief that pain makes you more worthy. You can keep the lesson without keeping the fear. You can keep the boundary without keeping the wall. You can keep the wisdom without letting the wound make every new decision. Remember the invisible scorecard. Your growth was never measured only by what arrived. It was measured by what no longer controlled you. Remember the after-test lag. If part of you is still learning to relax, that does not erase the progress. Your inner world is allowed to catch up. Remember the receiver gap. Clarity matters because what you can recognize affects what you can respond to. You do not need to notice everything. You only need enough clarity for the next honest step. Remember the survival identity trap. You are not required to suffer forever just because suffering taught you something valuable. Now let these words become your declaration. I am not who entered this season. I do not need pain to prove my worth. I can discern without fearing everything. I can receive without abandoning wisdom. I can rest without becoming weak. I can move without knowing every answer. I can choose peace without apologizing for it. I can leave old doors closed without questioning my value. I carry the lesson without carrying the prison. I honor what I survived without making survival my identity. I am ready to live beyond the test. Let that settle. You do not need to force a feeling. You do not need to pretend that every question disappeared tonight. You only need to recognize what is true. Pressure no longer gets to decide who you become. Fear can speak, but it does not get the final vote. If these words mark something real in you, write, I live beyond the test below. Let that declaration be simple. Let it be honest. Let it mark the moment you stop asking the old season for permission to enter the new one. What comes next does not require the version of you who survived everything. It requires the version who learned from it, kept the wisdom, and released the prison. Chosen one, the test does not have to follow you forever. Carry what made you wiser. Leave what made you smaller. Walk forward with discernment. Walk forward with clarity. You passed more than a test. You discovered that pressure can surround you without owning you. And now you are allowed to live like someone who knows the difference. Amen. It is sealed.